So as I said, it's quite a timely discussion because we have the European elections that just took place in June. And we also have mounting pressure around the CO2 standards regulation from different national governments, but also the automotive industry, as well as the Draghi report, which calls for more technology neutral approach in European road transport regulation. So we'll focus today on how the European Union can achieve the emission reduction goals for road transport, in particular in the heavy-duty transport segment. And we'll have the chance to have a speaker from the European Commission's Directorate General for Mobility, Dario Dubolino, who will give us an overview of the legislation that was adopted in the previous mandate as part of the Fit for 55 package, as well as what we can expect coming up next. We'll also have Lars Mårtensson from Volvo Trucks, who will give us the perspective from OEMs, and Neli from Vlantana, who will give us a perspective from transporters, especially in the Baltic region and Central Europe. And finally, we'll have Marino Varricchio, who will join us from the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition, who is giving us the perspective from a think tank. So at Eurogas, we are really convinced that renewable and low carbon fuels can play a role to decarbonize road transport sector, in particular hydrogen and biomethane. But we are also keen to hear your views on this topic and to make the discussion as interactive as possible. So please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask the questions that you have to the panelists, and we will come back to them later. But before, I would like to first welcome our first keynote speaker, Dario Dubolino, if you could turn on your camera. Good afternoon, Dario.
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you so much for joining. It's really a pleasure to have you. And yeah, we'd be really interested to hear from you, from the Commission, on how road transport policy has evolved during the previous mandate, what new initiatives we can expect, both for the light and heavy-duty transport segment, and especially what role do you see for renewable and low-carbon gases in there. So we'll give you the floor for a 10-minute keynote speech, and afterwards, please don't hesitate to stay connected with us for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and indeed welcome to everyone. It's a very timely seminar, of course. As you all know, we have the new commission being, well, at least the new commission nominees waiting for their confirmation. So we are indeed at a time when we've closed the mandate of the previous commission, and now we are looking at what we will need to be doing in the next period. This also means that whatever I say today about the future is subject to what happens with the new commission and what will be the exact political decisions that are taken. Now, having said that, however, we can look at what we have done so far and what we have in the political guidelines and the mandate letters for the new commissioners as an indication of where we see the transport sector and its decarbonization going. In the past mandate, the Commission has set a clear legal framework for the decarbonization of transport as a whole, with specific roadmaps, if you want, for the different sectors. When you look at the road transport sector, we have the CO2 emission performance standards for light-duty vehicles and heavy-duty vehicles, accompanied by the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation, and we have a rather clear trajectory going towards a fleet consisting mostly or almost exclusively of zero-emission vehicles by 2050. For maritime and aviation, we see that we know very well, we do not have such options. We do not currently have zero emission options for these modes. So the focus will be primarily on decarbonizing the fuels that go into these modes. And this is why we have transport targets in the Renewable Energy Directive, but also specific dedicated tools like FuelEU Maritime and ReFuelEU Aviation. And I think this is important when we discuss the role of gaseous fuels in transport in general, but also when we look at what are the available options, also in terms of availability of different fuels for road transport compared to modes that do not have other options but decarbonizing the fuels. So all in all, the trajectory is rather clear. I think it is important for road transport specifically to consider what are our zero emission options today. We see from the point of view of the legislation, zero emission, meaning zero tailpipe emission as battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, and hydrogen internal combustion engines. And I think it is important to underline, from the point of view of EU legislation, these three are considered equal. There is no difference in treatment between one and the other. While we go towards these zero emission options in the fleet, of course, we have an existing fleet of vehicles that run on internal combustion engines where renewable fuels, including gaseous fuels, can definitely play a role. As I said, battery electric, fuel cell, hydrogen, hydrogen internal combustion engine. We do not express a preference. We are neutral between these three zero emission technologies. We see at the moment on the market a rather clear preference so far for battery electric. The rate of deployment of the vehicles is significantly higher compared to hydrogen. However, there seems to be a rather potential interest in hydrogen, especially for heavy-duty vehicles, where the operational advantages that could be offered by hydrogen vehicles would justify a stronger role. Again, this is not, I'm not talking about a preference from the Commission, but this is what we are seeing on the market. Now, whether we are talking about road transport or maritime, the key element that we see today is that we need to scale up production of renewable fuels, renewable gaseous fuels in particular, and renewable liquid fuels. At the moment, the production is nowhere near sufficient for the expected demand. And this leads me to a key expectation, I would say, in terms of the work to be done in the next years. The current commission, the past commission has set in place a clear framework. Now, industry and market operators across the chain, from vehicle manufacturers, infrastructure managers, fleet managers, have a clear picture of where the sector is going. But this does not mean that the work is done. There are significant challenges in the implementation of these targets and in the framework conditions from an economic point of view, from a technical point of view, that we need to put in place to ensure that this is implemented correctly. And I think when you look at the mandate letters for the commission, for the commissioners, there is a rather clear focus on making sure that we implement our pathways towards carbon neutral Europe in a way that preserves and increases our competitiveness. And this is another important element. The transition towards a carbon neutral economy, and in the case of transport, zero emission transport in road and carbon neutral in other modes, is not something that we are doing alone or that we are the only ones undertaking. The whole global market is seeing these shifts, and it is crucial that we make sure that we do this in a way that keeps our competitiveness and allows us to play a key role from an economic perspective, as well as in leading in efforts to fight climate change. So much of what we are looking at the moment is connected to how do we scale up production of these fuels? How can we increase the competitiveness of our vehicle manufacturers, fuel producers, transport operators, etc. Some initial measures are in place. I hope you're all familiar with the Renewable and Low Carbon Fuels Alliance, which we have put in place to help create a pipeline of projects for the uptake of these fuels. The Hydrogen Bank is a rather recent example of a significant amount of financial resources being mobilized to kickstart the production of renewable hydrogen for the European economy. When you look at the mandate letters, you will see several similar initiatives. So I think, and again, subject to the political decisions that will be taken by the new college once the commissioners are confirmed by Parliament, but I think the key element right now will be to make sure that we can make the production and use of renewable and low carbon fuels, gaseous, we're talking about gaseous fuels today, more more competitive, more sustainable, and in general accelerate their deployment in transport as well as in other sectors. So really, we have the legal framework, we have the starting conditions. Now the focus should be on making sure that these objectives translate into real changes on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dario. Thank you. It's very good overview of CO2 standards legislation, AFIR initiative, and the need to scale up renewable and low carbon fuels and ensure European competitiveness. That makes a lot of sense for me. Do you have any views to share with us, just maybe on other initiatives in the transport sector, for example, Greening Corporate Fleet Initiative? What are your views on the development of this one? Thank you.
Yes, so this is another element that we've that's been in discussion for a while now. We've had an open public consultation on this topic that closed just before the summer. We had, by memory, 267 responses. I think if any one of you has compiled the questionnaire and provided answers, you will have seen it was a very detailed questionnaire with rather a high number of detailed questions. We are assessing them right now. We will share the results as soon as possible. And you will have seen in the mandate letter for the Transport Commission, there is a reference to proposals in this sense. We will see what that should mean exactly, based both on the results of the open public consultation and again the political decision taken by the college. At this stage, I'm afraid we are not able to say much more than this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this insight, and thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. I hope you can stay connected for the rest of the discussions, and don't hesitate to ask questions or react during the panel discussion. Thank you, Dario. And in the meantime, I will call Lars Mårtensson, who is the Environment and Innovation Director at Volvo Trucks. Thank you, Lars, for joining to begin our panel discussion. And first, we'll have an introduction of each speaker. So please, Lars, could you briefly introduce Volvo Trucks? What is it that you do, and what drives your company to transition? And maybe some initial reaction on Dario's speech. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Svetlana, and I'm very happy to be here. For those of you who don't know about Volvo Trucks, we have been in the truck business now for almost 100 years, and we are a global company, meaning that the trucks and the services that we sell and develop, we sell them in more than 140 countries all over the world. And obviously, with that type of situation, we have always been in developing and adapting to very different local conditions. And that, of course, also applies when we speak about different types of policies and legal demands, which I will come back to within short. From our side, the good thing, especially I would say for me, who has been here now with Volvo now for almost 30 years, working with environment and sustainability, I would say that it has been a tremendous development, and we see that customers or policymakers all over the world, they have set a very clear direction. We as a company, just like many of our customers, we are committed to the Paris Agreement. We are committed to the 1.5 degrees, and we have set science-based target accordingly, meaning that by 2040, we want to be a net zero company. We want to have trucks that can be net zero. But of course, we are very much dependent on many others in order to make this happen. But what we also know very, very, very clearly is that there will not be a silver bullet solution for this. We believe that there will be need for complementing technologies, and we already heard about a little bit about some of those technologies. It is quite clear that battery electric is a technology that will take a significant role in the future, and already today we have a strong position here in Europe with more than 6 different electric truck models that we have been selling now for several years. However, we also believe that there is a need for fuel cell electric trucks running on hydrogen, as well as combustion engines running on hydrogen, or as we have already today, an opportunity to run them on compressed biogas, or even better in many cases than liquefied biogas, bio-LNG. So there are solutions today, but I think coming back to what has already been stated as well is that in order to be successful here for us in Europe and also globally, we are very much dependent on many other stakeholders. Policies are important, and policies then need to address, let's say, the chicken and the egg problem, because we, of course, need to make sure that we have access to the energy. We need to make sure that this energy needs to be distributed, and also that there are filling stations or charging points, etc., available for our customers. So there is a need to secure, let's say, all the different pieces here in the puzzle in order to make this work in real life. The good thing is that we see good steps in that direction, but I would say that considering the situation that we see now with climate, considering also that our objectives and our customers' objectives to a very large extent are very ambitious, it's not going fast enough. So obviously we really, really want to see much stronger support in order to overcome some of the challenges, and also, of course, creating even better enabling conditions, because otherwise this will not happening fast enough, and this will not be good enough for many different reasons. But it looks very promising when it comes to, let's say, the commitment, but now we need to make it happen in real life as well.
Thank you very much. I think that matches with what Dario has been mentioning about the need to implement the policies that were adopted and to ensure that the enabling conditions are there. But we'll come back to that. Thank you, Lars, for this introduction. And now we'd like to hear from the transporter's perspective. So Neli, if you could please join us. Thank you so much, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Svetlana, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here today and share our company's story and experience. So Vlantana is a Lithuanian asset-based transport company, which was founded in 1996. And since then, we've become one of the leading transportation companies in Europe. We have offices in Lithuania, Poland, and Germany, which unite more than 3,000 dedicated professionals. Our fleet consists of 1,700 trucks and 2,200 trailers. and we specialize in full truckloads, and we deliver to our customers annually more than 150,000 loads. And I believe it's important to highlight that 40% of all our deliveries utilize intermodal solutions, which in fact help both us and our customers to significantly reduce our carbon footprint and the overall environmental impact of logistics. And since one of our company's main values is sustainability, our strategy is to constantly innovate and invest in greener solutions, which could later on be integrated into our operational DNA. And today, I'm really happy to share with you about our practical journey in search of alternative fuels, which in fact started in 2018 when we tested the first CNG truck in Lithuania. In 2019, we tested the LNG truck. And since in general, the technology aligned with our long-term sustainability vision and goals, we decided to invest in it by purchasing trucks and building the infrastructure. So the first 65 LNG LPG trucks joined our fleet in 2021. Then 2 years later, the LNG refueling station was built at our headquarters in Klaipėda. And in fact, this was a great achievement not only for our company, for Vlantana, but for Lithuania in general, because this was the first LNG LPG refueling station for heavy-duty vehicles in the country. And since we understand the importance of the infrastructure in fostering innovation, we've made our refueling station publicly available to all external users. And by doing this, we really hope that we can support other players in the industry and also encourage them to invest in greener fleets and low carbon solutions. And by the end of this year, we plan to double our LNG LPG fleet by adding 65 new trucks, which will lead us to a total of 130 vehicles of LNG LPG. And well, overall, it's all about our company's commitment to sustainability that drives us, let's say, to embrace this transition and industry-wide change. And we really hope to hear soon better and let's say brighter news, because this is really challenging, as Lars mentioned, right? And we all need support, and it seems that it's all about risk sharing. So I really look forward to hearing the rest of the panelists, and I really hope that the more we talk about this will, let's say, help us get to the point where some changes are being made. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Neli, for this introduction. We'll come back to the risk sharing part and what measures we could implement additionally. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I would like to call our third speaker for this discussion. Marino, if you could please turn on your camera. Perfect. Hello, good afternoon. So Marino, you come from the European Roundtable on Climate Change and Sustainable Transition. The ERCST is quite a famous Brussels-based think tank. And I would like to hear from your side, first a brief introduction on what is it that you do, and your work on decarbonization policies, especially for the heavy-duty vehicles segment. So please, Marino.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, and thanks to the other panelists, Neli, Lars, and Dario. Thank you very much. Thank you for, at the same time, introducing the regulatory landscape, Dario, and Neli and Lars presenting the industry needs and potential. I work in a think tank, as you said, Svetlana. I oversee the sustainable fuels and carbon removals work streams here at ERCST. We are an independent Brussels-based think tank, and we broadly operate in the field of environment and energy policies. My colleagues, they all oversee several work streams from CBAM to UETS to electrification to Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And we try to provide an accurate and a data-driven analysis of the regulatory landscape, the EU regulatory landscape on energy policy and environmental policy. At this point, I would like basically to introduce the work that I do here in the field of sustainable fuels, and in particular heavy-duty transport. Basically, I analyze the policy proposals as they come out, policy proposals, policy intentions, communications. I try to bring a fresh and analytical perspective and try to analyze the policy gaps that affect the policies that are being considered or being approved by the EU institutions, and how the policies actually serve the industry and society in various ways. In particular, as Neli and Lars said, the industry, and also Dario as well, the industry really needs an uptake in renewable gas use and liquid fuels. And I think that especially with the heavy-duty vehicles, electrification presents several challenges, and I can summarize those challenges. There can be technical constraints that have to do with the energy density requirements, or with the charging infrastructure limitations, or with operational constraints, for example, charging times. There can be economic considerations that basically preemptively do not allow for an electrification-only approach. And among these economic considerations, the total cost of ownership and the grid's dependence on stability are something that are require considerations. And also renewable fuels do have an advantage, at least currently, in terms of higher energy density and in terms of the repurposing of the existence infrastructure compatibility. Also, there are right now some funding gaps and some market barriers that kind of generate an insufficient support for the renewable fuel infrastructure development. And also, one could say that a lack of life cycle emissions accounting is problematic from that point of view. There could be several recommendations, several measures, and several proposals that I'm sure that the European Commission is considering to bridge certain policy gaps. A lot of more work is to be done, but as Mr. Dubolino said, right now at least market players do have a far clearer regulatory landscape to navigate through. So at this point, I'm really looking forward to the discussion and to interacting with you all. Thank you very much, Svetlana.
Thank you, Marino. I think you can stay with us because we will discuss now more in details together with Lars and Neli on some of those questions. Especially, I would like to dig a bit deeper in the advantages, disadvantages of the different technologies that you've identified. So please, just wait for everyone to join us. Perfect. Thank you so much. Maybe a first question for Lars. You mentioned that there were electric vehicles, of course, fuel cell hydrogen vehicles, internal combustion engine hydrogen vehicles available. Could you tell us more a bit about the development of those solutions? Where do they stand today, and what are the main advantages or shortcomings of those solutions that you see from your client's perspective also?
Many questions at once. But short answer, to start with, we are going from a situation where we have been developing diesel engines for 90 plus years, and now we are developing all the different technologies that you mentioned there. Where we today have, let's say, a commercial offer of electric trucks, diesel trucks, and gas-powered trucks using CNG and LNG. But going forward, we are also developing new technologies like fuel cell electric and also combustion engines running on hydrogen, where we see that they will more come into the market end of this decade. So I would say that today for our customers, there are many options available, but of course it's complex for them to navigate and see which ones are the best ones for their type of transports. Where do they see, let's say, policies going for the future, and also how do we overcome some of the barriers that exist today? And it can differ from country to country.
Thank you very much. Marino, would you like to jump on this and tell us a bit more about the differences that you identified among the different technologies? Thanks. You're muted, I think.
I'm sorry. Yeah, basically to come back to the challenges with electrification, that's something that is closely related, especially in HDVs. We first have to mention, as I said, the energy density requirements that HDVs have. That's require energy density to maintain range and payload capacity. And while batteries provide lower energy density compared to liquid or gaseous fuels, and this could lead to increased vehicle weight and reduced cargo capacity, for example. Now, second aspect may be related to the charging infrastructure limitations that I cursorily touched upon before. Fast charging of HDVs requires power level up to several megawatts, which can strain and put pressure on local electrical grids and necessitate substantial infrastructural upgrades. And again, related to these, there is a problem with infrastructure availability currently, especially in Southern Europe. The rollout of high-power charging stations along major transport corridors is limited, and this poses logistical challenges for HDVs operators. Speaking about alternative solutions, actually, renewable liquid fuels like advanced biofuels or gaseous fluids like biomethane or renewable hydrogen, they offer higher energy density, and these are suitable for long-range HDV application without compromising on payload. And again, this is another cost-efficient aspect that can be considered. These fuels can often be used with minimal or quasi-minimal modification to the existing engines or fuel infrastructure, and these reduce the extensive need for investments. So given these technical and the economic challenges of electrifying HDVs, renewable fuels can provide a practical and immediate pathway to reduce emissions to decarbonize the sector, be it in a transitional way or in a more conclusive stance. What matters is that a technology neutral, and I conclude here, a technology neutral approach is kept, something that, by the way, the competitiveness report by Mr. Draghi emphasized, and that basically the focus should not be on cherry picking the winners or artificially pushing existing technology, but simply to set emission targets and let market players decide which ones are the ones that are worth pursuing based on cost-efficient considerations and investment opportunities.
Thank you for that insight. And I think that already touches upon one of the questions we received in the chat. Let me know if you need more clarifications, and don't hesitate to continue sending your questions in the chat. Thank you, Marino, for that. Maybe now from Neli's side to hear from the practical perspective as a transporter, do you see the same, let's say, advantages or shortcomings to some technologies, and why did Vlantana choose to transition with LBG? Thank you.
Well, as I heard my co-panelists, I see that we are on the same page, actually. And sharing our perspective is, let's say, if we compare LNG LBG with diesel trucks, then the advantages are significantly lower greenhouse gas emissions and air pollutants. And what is more, LBG is a renewable source, which further enhances its sustainability profile. And if we compare LNG LBG to electric trucks, then the advantage is, of course, fast refueling times and the greater range, which in fact is more suitable for long-haul distances. So as somebody from co-panelists mentioned, it all depends on the operation type the company chooses, whether you are on the long-haul distances or last mile deliveries. So there are so many options to choose from, and this is how we, let's say, compare the advantages and opt, let's say, the maximum from it.
Thank you. You mentioned that you were responsible for also the intermodal department within Vlantana. So how do you really need to combine long-haul vehicles with intermodal?
Yes, and actually, let's say my focus in Vlantana is to create longer distances to connect the dots, let's say connecting ferry terminals with the railway terminals to make sure our trailer travels a longer distance without the truck. And for the last mile, let's say we choose the most sustainable option needed for that, let's say, operation. And it means that we can offer our customers a most sustainable way to actually move their goods from point A to point B. So yes, this is what we focus on. It's really challenging, believe me, but it's actually really amazing when you sometimes look at the map and you see how many, let's say, kilometers. Let's say there are 2,000 kilometers that can be driven by a truck and trailer, yes, but you can actually switch all this map from road to rail and use only the last mile for the trucking. So, I mean, it's really amazing, and it also adds up to the same European Green Deal course. And we are really on this mission to, let's say, make most of it and, let's say, lead by example, because sometimes it's not our customers that ask for some options, but it's us knocking on the door and saying, hey, guys, here's something we just, are thinking of. What do you think? Would you prefer to switch? This is how much, CO2 you would save. This is other advantages. And I'm really happy that in time, we get more customers with the same vision. And we see that more and more of them are on this green mission. So it's really nice to see that.
Thank you. Do you see the infrastructure developments, refueling, for example, as a challenge in the regions that you operate? And is there a difference?
Well, yeah, if we compare it to, let's say, general fuels, standard ones, you name it, then it's really challenging in comparison because the infrastructure, it varies from region to region. In some regions, we see significant investments in the infrastructure, whereas other regions, they just lag behind. But what I think it's really important that since we have some regions with best practices, then these best practices could be applied in other regions to make sure we have this infrastructure well developed. Because otherwise, if there's no infrastructure, then it's really hard to actually operate these trucks.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Neli. And maybe to jump back on that question of the differences across the region, I think, Lars, you touched briefly upon it as well. Would you like to elaborate on this topic?
I think Neli made a very clear point on this, and I think it's quite clear for us when we look at all the different alternatives to the traditional fuel diesel. There is a need for an infrastructure, and that varies very much from country to country all over the world. And it's also from our perspective quite clear that the alternative fuel infrastructure regulation is good, but it's not enough from that perspective. So much more is needed. And of course, we as a company, we can address this in different ways. And the way we're doing it today is that we in many cases, together with our customers, we work together with the energy companies. So together with energy companies, we and our customers, we show that there is a potential here for a gas station for bio-LNG, and we describe how we can grow this over time, and then step by step we're trying to grow this infrastructure in all countries in Europe. So our sales people, in a way, they have also become in a way one of their tasks is very much to cooperate with energy companies and together with our customers build the necessary infrastructure, because otherwise we will not sell any trucks and we will not take advantage of the opportunities that exist already today.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's all about, as you mentioned before, collaborating also with other parts of the value chain. No, that's very, very interesting. And now that we briefly touched upon the infrastructure question, maybe we could talk about some other barriers. We mentioned that it was imperative to accelerate the uptake of renewable and low carbon fuels. But why? What is the barrier for that? Maybe Marino, you would like to say a few words about that? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. There could be several barriers, both on a technical and logical point of view. One of them is a lack of life cycle emissions accounting, for example, that could help the uptake of those fuels. An absence of WTW assessment, for example, because by focusing only on tailpipe emissions, the current standards neglect the GHG emissions associated with fuel production and distribution, which can be significant. And I mean, for example, electricity used to charge BEV could come from fossil fuel sources in some regions, resulting in higher upstream emissions. And this could actually have an impact on policy effectiveness. Now there is a growing support for renewable fuels infrastructure development, also thanks to the recent measures that were proposed and accepted by the Commission. But there is still, I think, a funding gap and market barriers that can come into consideration. So I think that, for example, adopting the life cycle emissions accounting, or addressing electrification challenges in HDBs through the support of renewable fuels could actually help and foster the uptake of those products. I see that Mr. Dubolino has raised.
Yeah, it would be great. Thank you, Marino. If Dario, you could react.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to quickly comment because it's the second time that you mentioned the life cycle assessment, and just to reassure everyone in the room, there have been comprehensive assessments of the life cycle impacts of different fuels and different vehicles. One was published by the Commission, if memory serves well, in 2019, might have been 2020. A more recent one was performed for the Parliament and published, I think, about a year ago. And they both confirm the same message, which is even when you look at the electricity mix with the lowest share of renewable electricity in Europe, there are still significant savings from a life cycle perspective when you move from diesel to battery electric, both in LDVs and HDVs. About half, you cut by about half. Keeping in mind also that we have a very clear trajectory towards higher and higher shares of renewable electricity. So the overall life cycle emissions will keep reducing. For hydrogen vehicles, you also have gains, slightly low, well, quite lower at the moment because of the lower overall efficiency, because you have some energy losses in the electrolyzer. So your share of non-renewable electricity in the mix will result in a higher level of emissions overall, but both options are significantly better than the alternative. So this is not something that has not been taken into account. It has been considered. We've seen the results, and the conclusion was that for road transport, the approach based on tailpipe is the one that works better overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dario, for the reaction. Maybe can I ask you a follow-up question on this? On the CO2 standards regulation, we've seen that there was a movement from the European Parliament side to include some amendments that could, let's say, correct or that could complement the tailpipe approach that was taken in the regulation to recognize, for example, vehicles that run exclusively on biomethane, that could have a significant benefit from a life cycle perspective. What would be your view on these discussions currently and with the new mandate?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Well, the Commission has committed to take into account the role of vehicles that are capable exclusively of running on carbon neutral e-fuels. This is being done for the light duty vehicles. When I say it's being done, the Commission has presented a proposal. There are two elements here. We need to first amend the type approval legislation to identify and recognize these types of vehicles. And then the next step would be amending the CO2 emission performance standards to take into account their contribution. At the moment, the Commission has presented an initial proposal, which so far has not received support by a majority of member states. Now we will see with the new Commission how this goes forward, but you will have seen the President has also repeated our commitment to find a solution of this kind, again, for vehicles running exclusively on carbon neutral e-fuels.
Thank you so much for clarifying, Dario. That's very good. And I think that can bring us to our next question for all the panelists. From the regulatory and policy side, what do you think is needed to support the uptake of alternatively fueled vehicles, light duty or heavy duty in the future? And perhaps we could start with Neli for this question.
Yes, Svetlana, I would say that two main policy regulations should be, let's say, emphasized. The first one is we need some substantial incentives, financial incentives, such as subsidies for vehicle purchase or infrastructure investment. And the second one, from the transportation perspective, one of the most important ones is implementation of toll exempts, let's say EU-wide across EU countries, because currently there are no exempts, and the same LBG trucks are regarded as diesel trucks. So that would definitely help in general promote adoption of alternative fuels. So this is from my side, two main points.
Thank you very much, Neli.
Thank you.
Perhaps we can continue the round with Lars.
Yes, I will start with maybe the most important one, and then the obstacle, the biggest obstacle here is by far is the price of diesel. So obviously energy taxes is a key policy instrument in order to address that and also make it more favorable to pick, let's say, the alternatives. Either it's electric or it's bio-LNG, as two examples. The other one, which I think Neli was into, is obviously the Eurovignette and road tolls. And Germany has proven that this could be a very, very strong tool when it's used in a good way, even though I would have liked Germany also to make clear much better benefits for especially bio-LNG trucks in Germany. But I think it's setting a good example. But then we shouldn't forget maybe one of the most important ones here as well, if I may add a third one, and that is once again the infrastructure here. There has to be incentives to make sure that we get the gas infrastructure in place, the charging infrastructure, and for the different alternatives that we need going forward. So that is my top 3 list.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely be working also with our members on the implementation of the infrastructure. That will be a very important topic for the coming years, especially for hydrogen. But please, Marino, if you would like to also add on some recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Svetlana. There are several tools or recommendations that could bridge policy gaps or addressing challenges. The first one that comes to mind is perhaps to introduce voluntary crediting mechanisms for renewable fuels. In this way, perhaps manufacturer could receive CO2 credits for supplying renewable fuels that meet certain high-end sustainability criteria. We can, as Lars said, enhance the infrastructure support either through infrastructure support, either through financial support, regulatory measure, and improving the infrastructure availability is absolutely crucial for HDV operators to adopt renewable fuels. Another perhaps more regulatory tool that could be implemented is to strengthen binding sub-targets, for example, the RED III implementation to increase the minimum share of advanced biofuels and RFMBOs to reflect their potential and drive market development. And from the justification of the measure would be that higher targets could signal a stronger policy support, which in turn could encourage investment and scale up production. In general, I think that what could be warranted is to shift to a performance-based regulation to set emission reduction targets without prescribing specific technologies and to encourage innovation and competition among different tools.
Thank you so much, Marino. I'm staying mindful of the time. Maybe I would ask all of the speakers to give a final comment that you would like the audience to take away. And I will then have a look with you together at the questions that we have in the chat. So please, if you have any comments. If not, maybe a question from the audience is about the zero tailpipe emission requirement. Does it rule out the use of bio-LNG? Maybe Marino, you can take that. That's what you were talking about, I think. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, doesn't a zero tailpipe emission requirement rule out the use of bio-LNG? Currently, I'm not sure. I don't think so, but I will have to double check actually.
Thank you. Any other? Yes, I have a comment from Dario on this. Perfect.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yes, I mean, the approach under the current CO2 emission performance standards looks at tailpipe emissions. So indeed, the emissions that are saved by bio-LNG are in the so-called well-to-tank part. So let's say you have an LNG truck. First of all, the CO2 standards are aimed at the vehicle manufacturers. So from a manufacturer perspective, the truck running, it's an LNG truck. Then the second step is when you refuel the truck, you'll use bio-LNG or normal LNG. The emissions are at the tailpipe are basically the same. The savings will be, so they will contribute in the sense that an LNG truck has lower emission than a diesel truck. But it would not be zero emission because it would still have emission, whether it's bio-LNG or LNG.
Thank you for clarifying this. I see that Lars, you have your hand raised. Would you like to add to this?
Yeah, very briefly. And to us, it's quite obvious that the gas powered trucks, LNG and bio-LNG, of course, they will contribute to the 15% target 2025 here and the CO2 standards. But obviously, it will not. There will not be any benefits of using bio-LNG there. But also in the 2040 context with the 90% reduction, we believe that bio-LNG trucks will be important also in the long-term perspective. So because everything will not be electric or hydrogen, we believe that bio-LNG will be a long-term solution.
Thank you very much. And maybe the last question from the audience is about independence in terms of producing own energy sources, technologies. Isn't the internal combustion engine better for the local economy? Any views on that? It's a bit a controversial question. I see some smiles, some nodding. No. Please, Lars.
I would say that, I mean, even though we have a history with the internal combustion engine, I think that it will be possible for us, our customers, the transport buyers, the whole society to also be successful and profitable also with other alternatives. But the crucial part here is, of course, to make sure that everyone can make this journey in a good way. And a majority of the transport operators there, they are small and medium-sized enterprises. So obviously they need to have good enabling conditions in place in order to support this journey. But as a vehicle manufacturer, we will be prepared and we will adapt accordingly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if I can answer briefly the question. I mean, yes, thermal engines typically run on fossil fuels like gasoline, diesel, or natural gas, which in turn creates a dependency on oil-producing country, fuel distribution infrastructure, or refineries. I mean, every kind of mechanism generates some dependencies. It really depends from which point of view you are looking at the question. Of course, thermal engines are a mature technology, but to say that they reduce the energy dependence, yeah, I think it may be a little bit of an overstatement.
Thank you, Marino. And on this, mindful of the time for the audience, I would just like to thank all of you for participating in this discussion. I think for sure we will continue to have it within Eurogas and with our partners and hopefully with the institutions. So really appreciate the time that you put in. Maybe to conclude, we saw today that the Commission is really taking initiatives to decarbonize road transport, leading the way to accomplishing the Green Deal objectives, and that for that we will really need to boost the production of renewable and low carbon fuels such as biomethane and hydrogen, also in Europe, to ensure European competitiveness together with our sustainability goals. And for that we'll need the cooperation, of course, of different segments of the industry. We'll need the infrastructure. So we'll need all of you. So I really hope that we can continue this discussion. And yeah, thank you so much for joining and tuning in today. I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Svetlana.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.